How you doing, everybody? I'm Ken Bykoff, and welcome to the Peegs Podcast Live. Indiana's 2025 season starts today as the Hoosiers have their spring football game with kickoff coming at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm out here just outside of the parking lot at Memorial Stadium, the corner of Woodlawn and 17th Street. I'm here to take your calls, and we'll have special guests if fans want to come in and ask some questions, talk some Indiana football, some Indiana basketball, anything you want to talk about. That's what we're here for. 812-393-2600 is the number. If you are on the phone, we want to hear from you. If you're on your way in, students kind of walking around, people starting to come into the parking lot, really looking forward to all of this. Uh, been looking forward to this. We want to maybe do this here in the once the season comes on, but looking forward to seeing what the Hoosiers are able to do. The spring football game, I've been doing this for, this will be the 2025 season will be my 21st year of doing this here at Memorial Stadium. And it is going to be I can tell you that spring games aren't necessarily the very best in terms of learning anything about a football team, but considering all that you have changes for the season, I think it's going to be real interesting to see how all of this is going to play out. 812-393-2600 is the number. Might try to change up our connection here a little bit, try to make um, the feed a little bit smoother. We'll see how that all goes. But Kurt Cignetti's coming off a season in which Indiana 11-2 lost to the only two teams in which that they played for a national championship. This was everything that the Hoosiers hoped it would be. Bringing in a new head coach, it was a huge splash in terms of success for this program that historically has been pretty rough. But the Hoosiers are here to get the job done. And now it's one thing to be a one-year wonder; it's another thing to be able to step up and keep playing at a very, very high level. Uh, I like the way that Kurt Cignetti has been able to uh, build this program very quickly and raise certainly the expectations for the Hoosiers as they move into this year. This is a lot of guys have come in and said that they were going to change things around here, and there's going to be a new culture built, and everything that goes along with it. That has all long been, something that the Hoosiers have talked about, and it hasn't happened, except it did last year. It did last year, and Indiana looks to continue things. You're going to have huge changes for this team. Offensively, obviously, quarterback Curtis Rourke is moving on to the NFL draft. That is, best of luck to Curtis, a guy that I've gotten to know just a little bit, not a ton. I actually know his wife a little bit better, but Curtis has been was such an important part of what the Hoosiers did last year. And the success that he had certainly showed everybody around the country that you could have success playing for Kurt Cignetti and in this Indiana offense. Now, the nice thing for the Hoosiers is they've been able to have some success in terms of finding a replacement for Curtis Rourke. Fernando Mendoza is the guy that is expected to be kind of the starter that you look at, but there are options there as well. And so being able to kind of shake things up, be able to have the success that you had last year, and be able to go forward with it, I think is really important because going from point A to point B is one thing, but now that you're taking that extra step, I think it's going to be a fun season to say the least. Um, Offensively, Kalon Black is the key running back coming back, but you also have wide receivers and guys like EJ Williams and Omar Cooper, guys that come back and can make a huge difference once again this year. Offensive line depth has been a huge upgrade compared to what we've seen in past years. There's been a huge upgrade in that, and so that is a huge positive. And also, you're talking about a program that has at times not really been able to even hold a spring game because they've run into so many injury problems, specifically along the offensive line, that they haven't been able to do anything when it comes to a spring game. That isn't the case this year. Now, it's kind of a modified situation, obviously, to where it's going to be the first time all spring that there's going to be tackling. And you better believe that everybody will have been told, don't, lay the wood on anybody. It ain't time for that kind of thing. That's not what we're shooting for. And so that is going to be really important, just to stay healthy and come out of this spring game as healthy as possible. That is not a challenge, but it is something that is definitely a priority for this ball club today. Defensively, Indiana has a lot going for it. With All-American Aiden Fisher is back. He's going to make a big difference as always with his play. That's exciting to see. But then Indiana also has plenty of depth along that that defensive line that is going to allow them to continue to be successful and continue to be disruptive. This is an IU football program that depth has been absolutely critical to everything they do. That is for any program, and to continue to have success, that's what is required. And so Indiana went out, got in the portal, added some players, but still has guys who are returning who can make a huge difference in what the 2025 season is going to be. It's not a complete reload. It is a situation where the Hoosiers uh, have a nice mix of guys who have been here, guys who have been productive, and also some new blood that makes sure that nobody gets uncomfortable and competition becomes, just the key to everything. D'Angelo Pods over on the corner is going to be really critical as well. As our Jeff Rabjohns comes rolling in the back, the back here, I'm going to have you come on over here. Oh, knocked over a water bottle. That's fine. Jeff Rabjohns joins us, rolling on in. Uh, Let him be able. You could handheld that one as he comes in. 812-393-2600 is the number for anybody who wants to give us a call. We're on the corner of 17th and Woodlawn for anybody who wants to come and join us and ask any kind of questions about IU football or IU basketball. And Rabbi, I was just, kind of talking to everybody about the depth that Indiana has. That's a little bit different than maybe what we've seen uh, in the past. And just the way that, yeah, you had that successful season last year, but the talent that is coming off a successful season for IU has maintained a level that's going to allow them to be successful and probably once again.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as we look at what we're going to see here in the spring game this evening. Obviously, you got some headline talent out there. You got three All Americans returning, and you know, first time I believe looking at the record books that you go into a spring game and you're like, okay, that's an All American, that's an All American, that's an All American. Not projecting, but Mikael Kamara, Aiden Fisher, D'Angelo Pons, they were All Americans last year. So you've got some headline talent, but yeah, you also have depth. I think you've got uh, some really good additions from the transfer portal. Um, you've got obviously a tremendous addition there on the offensive line, Pat Coogan from Notre Dame. You got some other guys, uh, um, Hosea Wheeler, Louis Moore, Dominic Rodriguez, some of the other guys you think about as far as transfer portal newcomers on the defense. So I think I think there is good depth this year, and I think that's one of the reasons that there's a lot of optimism about the IU football program. It's not just okay. There's one or two, maybe three or four guys you're like, okay, they can do it, but you really got questions about half the team or half the position groups. I think there's a really good depth of talent there. I think that's a really key point about this team.
Replacing Curtis Rourke with Fernando Mendoza, or whoever ends up winning. Obviously, Mendoza is a guy that everybody's looking at. What differences do you see in those two players, and how important is it to bring in a guy who is as much of a veteran as Mendoza is? He's played some football along the way.
I think he's a tremendous talent, and Curtis Rourke did an amazing job last year, especially
Considering he had a tear in his ACL for part of the season and played through it. Showed incredible toughness. Was a really good passer. I think to me, one of the things that's a little bit different is I think Mendoza just has a little more talent in the arm. I just think there's more throws that he can make at a really high level. Curtis Work can make pretty much all the throws, and he might have a chance to play in the NFL. So he's obviously very talented. But I think Mendoza's, one notch above that. There's just more throws that he makes that are really, really on time, on target. The ones that need to be, a frozen rope are. The ones that need to be rainbowed in are. I remember watching early practice before they put pads on. Um, when they were out there, in their pajamas, as Kurt Signetti
Right.
likes to say, but just no pads. And one of the things I learned from an assistant coach years ago was when you watch quarterbacks throw, if they're not throwing, against defense, if they're just playing against air, and the receivers are running full speed, count how many times the ball actually hits a receiver in the hands when they're running full speed. And I've always kept that in the back of my mind. So when early practice we were watching and they were doing the quarterbacks, they got the field kind of cut in half, so they can do two quarterbacks at a time. And I just took, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes and said, you know what? I'm watching Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah.
He's the new quarterback. And I counted 44 passes that he threw. 44 of them hit receivers in the hands who were running at speed. So that's one of the things. And again, I understand you're not getting hit, you're not getting tackled. The receivers aren't getting hit; they're getting free runs. But you want somebody to do that and just throw sideline outs, slant and goes, uh, some crossing routes, some drag routes, different things, throwing to running backs, throwing to tight ends, throwing to slot guys, throwing to your wideouts. And 44 out of 44 hit him in the hands. And I thought I walked away going, wow, okay, they got a dude at quarterback. They got a real dude. And I think one thing that's going to help him with Indiana is he was good at Cal.
Right.
But, there were possessions. He's running for his life. I
Right.
mean, it was just like, oh crap, a free rusher. And I think he's going to be he's got tremendous talent, but I think he's going to be better because he's not going to be running for his life. They're just going to protect him better with, Carter Smith, Bray Lynch, Pat Coogan, maybe Khalil Benson if, the guy who transferred back to IU from Colorado, if he
Right.
gets healthy. Not expected to play tonight, but you think about Mendoza's stats last year and some of the plays he made when he was under duress, then you go, okay, what happens if he's not under duress a quarter of the time or a third of the time or half the time? I mean, a couple of those Cal games that I went back and watched, just every throw that or every drop back, he was pressured about half the time.
Yeah.
And I think Indiana's going to protect him better. But I think he's a tremendous talent. I think he's got a chance to be a special quarterback. I really do. And I'm not trying to hype him up here in the spring, but you see the size, you look at the stats, you watch the film, then you see him live, and it's like, okay, there's a lot there.
Yeah. Now, how about just we've been out here where they couldn't really hold a real spring game in any way, shape, or form because you had a offensive line that was so beat up that they just didn't have enough guys.
Right.
This year, there's depth. And yeah, they've had, guys get banged up. That's going to happen along the way. But it's just the depth of that offensive line, how much does that help a transition from one quarterback to the next and to just allow yourself to kind of build a foundation for your program?
Yeah, I think it's really important because a strong offensive line is sort of a core foundational piece. It's the old coaching phrase is you can't call what you can't block
Right.
as far as play calling goes. And I don't know that there's going to be a lot that they're unable to block. Carter Smith's very good. Bray Lynch very good. Pat Coogan comes in from Notre Dame, and it was interesting looking at him in spring practice. Jeff Keg, the outstanding sports information director, gives us a roster to try to figure out, which new guy, who's who.
Right.
It's an early spring practice. You know some of the guys, but there's a lot of new faces.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Jeff. I think something's wrong on this roster. This says Coogan's 78. He's a center, and 78's the tallest guy over there. And he looks at me and goes, "No, that's Pat Coogan." I'm like, "Oh, that's a center, huh?"
Yeah.
Okay. Tallest guy, big broad shoulders. I'm like, if you would have said no, that's the left tackle, you'd have thought, "Yeah, okay."
Right.
But he's big, and I think he's going to do a really good job. But yeah, I think the line being stout, being talented, having some experience, even some of the guys who may be backups have some experience. You're not going to have to throw in completely untested guys or anything. I think that's going to help the running game. I think it's really going to help Fernando Mendoza at quarterback. Really, just give him comfort level that I think is going to accelerate his ability to perform well quickly. It's not going to be a situation where they really got to try to kind of like figure out some stuff. The line's going to, I think the line is going to be able to do its job and do its job pretty well.
What do you like about this running back room?
Um, there's a number of them.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing. There's a number of them. Roman Hembry. The rest of them. You look at there's 3, 4, 5 guys. You're like, okay, you could put him in the game and expect him to go get you some yards on the ground.
Right.
Obviously, IU's had some tremendous running backs. Going back to Tevin Coleman and obviously great ones if you want to go back to that history. But I think the thing that stands out about this running back room is there's legit depth.
Yeah.
There's guys who can block. There's guys who can get you yards between the tackles. There's guys who can have some home run speed to them. Maybe not a Tevin Coleman type, but they can break. Turn 4 into 10, turn 10 into 20. So I just like the number of guys that you look at and go, yeah, we'll put his helmet on him, send him in the huddle. We're good.
I like the versatility of the wide receivers too. That you have guys that each of them can do a lot of things, and that sounds very generic, but it's actually it makes it so that you have a defense that can't really concentrate on any way. We got to keep him in front of us. We got to, well, you keep this guy in front of us, then the next guy is going to run past you.
Right.
That versatility and from top to bottom, I think is going to be something they could really benefit from too.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, there's guys who are speed is their biggest skill or weapon, or what scares a defense the most. Some of them it's just the speed. Some of them it's really precise route running, and I think they're going to have the ability to get an angle on a defender, get an angle on a safety, get an angle on a linebacker, maybe be able to even like go up and give the safety a bump and sort of like bounce off of them a little bit with a little bit of the shoulder and stuff. They can create some separation because obviously space is a receiver's best friend, and the quarterback has to do his job to get the ball to where there's supposed to be space. The receiver's got to do his job to try to create space.
Right.
And I think they have guys who can, with their speed, can create space by getting past people. Guys who are really more of those quick twitch kind of guys who can create some space by getting the defender to take one wrong step or just open up his hips the wrong way for half a second and then boom, make a cut and you create some space. So yeah, I like the receiver room too.
Defensively, they were so good last year.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that their approach to the game, the way that they never got too high, never got too low, almost never hung their head on
Right.
the field, which is something that had long been a problem here at IU. That leadership that Aiden Fisher and guys like that are going to be able to bring. How do you see that defense playing out this year?
I think it's going to be really good. Like we were talking about earlier, if you have the 3 All-Americans returning, 3 different parts of the field. Mikael Kamara is going to adjust his position, but All-American defensive lineman last year, tremendous at the point of attack. Aiden Fisher, linebacker, middle linebacker, guy who can go side to side, can come up and pressure the quarterback, can drop a little bit into coverage. Really you can kind of aim his eyes wherever you want to aim him. Then D'Angelo Pons back there in the secondary. So I think the defense is looking pretty strong. It really does. And I think you made a really good point about how they don't get too high. They really were, okay, next play.
Right.
Whether something went well or didn't go well, next play. And I think one of the games where I thought that played out the best was at Michigan State. Michigan State gets up 10-0. First time they've been behind, I think it was 10-0, right? And first time IU had trailed. And so you're kind of like, okay, kind of like what's going wrong or what do they need? And I didn't really think anything was wrong. But you looked at it and went, okay, Michigan State's doing some stuff that they hadn't done. So IU's going to have to adjust. But the defense just made the adjustments and just kept playing and kept playing. And all of a sudden, 10-0 hole becomes, what was that, 42-10,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
at the end? And the defense never, you never saw them like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Or, oh crap, oh, well, today's not our day. No, it was like just next play, next possession, and they just kept playing. They figured out what adjustments they needed to make. And once they made the adjustments, I didn't think the mentality ever changed. Even though they gave up a touchdown and a field goal and they got behind, I didn't think the mentality changed. There were some things tactically that you looked at and went, okay, they're going to have to adjust. But I didn't think like the mentality ever changed, even though they went from being down 10-0 to winning 42-10. Excuse me. I think you made a really good point. Pardon me. the mentality just stayed the same. And guys who can stay steady in the fight, usually, if they have the proper skill and ability, those are the kind of guys who can get stuff done over the course of a season because it's a long season. It's tough. But yeah, their ability to just stay calm and steady, I think, is a really key attribute for that group. And
Just ha-
I think Brian Haynes and that whole defensive staff, I think they do a really good job of teaching that, not just teaching the proper technique, the proper scheme, and all that. They're very good at that. But Bryant, Pat, all those guys, they teach the mentality of you play this play. Then when it's over, it's over.
right.
You play the next play. And then when it's over, it's over. You don't think about the previous play. You don't, if you need to make an adjustment, sure, you make adjustments. But you don't sit there and dwell on, oh man, they just scored a touchdown on us. We're kind of screwed. It's like, okay, what do we do next time we're out there?
The experience of just going 11-2 last year and having that success and going to the college football playoff, regardless of what the result was, how important is that from a confidence level for all of these guys coming back? Look, when Kurt Signetti got here a year ago and we're doing this spring game, there's a lot of guys that were on that field that had dreams of being successful, but didn't know what the hell that felt like
Right.
because they just didn't. This year, they know exactly what it felt like. And I said all year last year that it's as good as it was going to get because there were no expectations going into last year. And all of a sudden, here is high expectations.
Right.
Now the expectations have been raised, but a lot of the guys that are here and main guys at every level, especially defensively, defensive line, linebacker, secondary. We're talking about D'Angelo Pons, Aiden Fisher, Mikhail Kamara. These are all guys that have been successful, have
Mhm.
felt that success and felt it at a high level. How important, how does it kind of change the way that they go into this season?
You know, I think it's one of those things where it takes confidence from the perspective of, I believe I can do this, to the level of, I've done this,
Right.
which I think for a lot of people, you talk about in any level of sports, experience is helpful. But I think experience of knowing that you know what you're doing and knowing that you can do it and knowing that you can do it against good teams, knowing that you can do it at home, on the road, whatever. I think that's really helpful. And I think it just gives them just another level of confidence,
It,
another level of just, I know I can do this individually. We know we can do this as a defensive line group, as a defense, as a team, whatever you want to call the we,
right.
just, group of players, position group, whatever. I think it takes it to a confidence level. I know we can do this because we've done it.
Yeah.
This is who we are, and we know it's who we are. It's, we showed it last year. And it's not like, I don't even think it's just the whole thing of like some people say, oh, they showed everybody else. Well, yeah, I guess because people didn't have a lot of expectation. I guess that's true. But I think in sports, the bigger thing is you showed it to yourself.
Right.
You proved to yourself who you really are on the field. And I think that's really helpful.
There's a chicken and egg aspect to the idea of hoping to win and expecting to win. That you have to go into each game expecting to win, but until you actually win those games, it's hard to truly feel that you expect to win.
Right.
Last year was a whole masterclass in learning how to expect to win. And going into this season, not only do you have guys that are coming in from outside programs that may have that attitude, but so does everybody else around them. And to me, that's going to help build the culture and really kind of maintain. I'm not saying they're going to go 11-2 again.
Right.
I'm saying that there is far more of a foundation for success now than we had at this time last year.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There definitely is. And I actually think this is going to sound crazy, but I think there's a chance they're a better team and the win total is slightly less.
Sure, I understand
The
that.
reason is they have to go to Oregon and to Penn State.
Mhm.
Ohio State won the national championship last year. They lost at Oregon. You go out there to Autzen Stadium. I've been there once, as many years ago. It's a cool place, but it's cool if you're the home team.
Yeah,
It ain't exactly welcoming to visiting teams, and they're really good and they're really talented and they're incredibly well coached. But I think Indiana's, I think their like quarterback play is going to take a notch up. Three returning All Americans on defense. I just think more depth, out receiver, and certainly in the running back room. I think they're a little bit more talented football team, but I think the schedule is tougher. So I think you could be looking at 8, 9 wins. And on paper, the people don't pay attention go, oh, they took a step back. I really don't think so. I think they're going to be a really good team, a really, really, really good team. And who knows with Kurt Signetti and, you know, his bravado. Maybe they maybe they
Yeah,
surprise
it's
everybody
pretty
once
simple.
again.
I
It wouldn't be a
win.
shock.
Google me.
There's your. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
I have that queued up all the time. So,
I like that.
speaking of Sig, what difference do you see in him this year, if any?
I don't see any, and maybe there's some things behind the scenes that only coaches see. But I remember watching him last year, spring ball, some fall practices, and you saw calm, confident guy. He does the Saban thing. He's got the hat on. He's more walking around, watching practice. He'll say something if he needs to say it, but he's not loud and boisterous. He lets the position coaches coach the positions. You see him walk over occasionally. He may say something to a player or say something to an assistant coach, but he's really, at one point in time, I thought, I think it was first or second practice that we got to see when he got here to IU last year. I thought maybe he was just observing everybody just to kind of be like, all right, I'm going to take this in for, a few practices, see what we got. Then I'll be, grab the bullhorn and get to it. But no, he's just more observing and watching, saying things when he needs to. But he is really calm, really organized. And I think the thing that does stand out is there's tremendous amount of details in a Coach Signetti practice. And obviously that speaks to the assistant coaches as well. They deserve a ton of credit for that. But there's just incredible detail in the teaching. There's not a wasted moment. They sprint from end to end, or they're drill to drill when they're doing things. Um, but just you stand there and you watch like position groups. And I remember last year just watching different groups, and you know, uh, you just watch the defensive line, and the teaching was really specific. And there were a couple of times it was, no, you can't do it like that. You come up. I want you jam his outside shoulder, then the left hand comes in. Do it again. And like little things that don't obviously matter in the game of football, but the teaching was really specific. But as far as is there a difference, observable difference in Signetti last year, this year? I'm not seeing it. I think what we saw last year is who Kurt Signetti is: calm, confident, maybe even a little arrogant in public, but he's not really privately. I mean, you sit down in his office and talk to him, and he's obviously very organized, but he's a regular guy. But I think the calm, confident, incredibly detail oriented guy we saw last year, I think is who Kurt Signetti is.
When that quiet confidence is also because he's done this before, and
Right.
he knows what he's doing. He believes in the process. It has already worked, and it continues to work as it goes on. And that is, it's you mentioned the Michigan State game. To me, that was where everybody really, they had bought in well before that, but that was absolutely proof in the pudding
Mm-hmm.
that they were completely and 1,000% bought in,
Yeah.
because they knew that that was what they were selling works. And if you doubted that after that, falling behind 10, nobody panics, you run off 40 plus straight. What more proof do you need that somebody knows what he's doing?
Right, right. Yeah, that was a key moment of the season. I think the UCLA game was when the fans, the hardcore IU fans kind of went, "Oh, we got ourselves a coach. We got ourselves a team this year." I think the Michigan State game was when the casual observers and even some of the national observers were like, "Okay, they can face a little adversity and grab the game by the throat very quickly and not let it go." It wasn't like they fell behind 10-0, then got up 17-10, then got behind 20-7. No, they fell behind 10-0, and then they said, okay, wait a minute, we're going to make these adjustments. And it was complete domination for 3.5 quarters, complete domination.
Wanted to ask you, what do you expect to see tonight? On the field, how this whole process is going to work. What are you going to be looking for?
I think starting number one, Fernando Mendoza, watching him throw, with guys, playing a football game, blocking, tackling, receivers getting hit, having to get open. I want to see him throw. Really interested to see Pat Coogan block, because, he looks like a monster. But you kind of want to see it with pads on. We saw it some last year when he played for Notre Dame, but want to see it with the group, with him out there with Carter Smith, Bray Lynch, and the rest of the offensive line. So I want to see that. Uh, Really intrigued to see Mikael Kamara, a little bit of a position adjustment there. Very, very interested to see him. Um, Want to see some of the new guys on defense, Hosea and some of those other guys, just exactly, how good are they? The resume is good, but I want to see, kind of like how do they play? And I'm really intrigued to see, um, kind of like what the defensive line looks like too. Can they get pressure? Can they not get pressure against a good offensive line? What kinds of pressure do they get? And I understand from a schematic standpoint, it's going to be vanilla. Nobody's puts things on film for
Right.
opposing coaches to study. But still, guys have pads on. They're going to be hitting each other. So those are kind of some of the things that I want to see. But I'm Fernando Mendoza. People are probably sick of me talking about him already. But I mean, there's a lot there, and are really looking forward to sitting there in the stands in person watching that guy throw.
Let's move across the Ferris Farm over here on 17th Street over to Assembly Hall and talk a little bit of basketball as well. Darren DeVries has taken over as the Hoosier head coach, and people were starting to get nervous that there weren't any players, but there's been
Starting to,
yeah, well,
starting to.
and here's the
Come
thing,
on, man! People were starting to lose their minds.
I was never too worried about that portion of the program because you knew that it was going to come when it came. And now they are starting to stack up some talent, guys that could score, guys that have size. They have some nice things happening along the way. Your thoughts on just how this roster has started to come together?
I think they did a really, really good job. They needed shooting. They went out and pursued shooting and got it. Lamar Wilkerson probably is the headliner there. Averaged 3.4 made threes per game for Sam Houston. IU fans probably remember him going for 19 points in Assembly Hall. But he was a really, really coveted guy. Kentucky went after him. Auburn went after him. National champion Florida went after him. Ole Miss, a bunch of schools went after him. And Darren DeVries, Drew Adams, Kenny Johnson, and those guys got that done. I think that's the headliner of the edition so far. I really like Tatum Connerway, the point guard that they just landed, Sun Belt Player of the Year. Led his team in scoring, uh, assists, and steals. In last year, as a point guard, he had more steals than turnovers. And I know the traditional metric is assist to turnover ratio, but one of the advanced things that some nerdy people like I look at is like steals to turnovers,
Right.
Possession gain versus possession lost, and very few guys throughout the course of an entire season end up with more steals and turnovers who play the point guard position. It's just because the point guard, you're going to have some turnovers. Some passes are going to get picked off, or you're going to get trapped. I really like him as an addition. Connor Enright gives you depth at the point guard position. I'm assuming Tate Connerway will win the starting position at the point guard, but it's DeVries is going to let it play out in practice. But I think it's safe to say that Connerway is the one you would expect to win that. But you've got two guys who can really handle the ball. Connor Enright transfers from DePaul, previously played for Darren DeVries at Drake. It was an AAU event this past weekend and talked to a couple of guys who actually coached Connor Enright in AAU. And I said, what did you like about him? What are the concerns? And they said, there's no concerns. They said, he's not the most physical guy, but there's no concerns. I said, okay, what do you like? And they said, the ball goes where it's supposed to go every possession.
Yeah.
And not every shot goes in, but the ball goes where it's supposed to go. And if you're a point guard who just does that, you help everybody else who's on the floor with you. So I think it's really good to have two guys can really handle the ball. They got Reed Bailey, a forward from Davidson, 6'10" guy, shot 41% from three last year. Only made a three every other game, so half a three made per game on average. But the 41% was a big jump. He actually trains the guy named Jason Smethers, who's an outstanding trainer who's based in Indianapolis, a guy who Reed Bailey was connected with back when he was playing AAU for Expressions Elite, team out of the Northeast. And Jason Smethers has worked with a ton of guys, Trace Jackson Davis, Gordon Hayward, other guys like that. Obviously, Gordon Hayward went from Butler to the NBA to,
right.
Really good. He was an NBA All-Star.
Yeah.
So when guys work with good trainers where you know their work, you tend to watch their path. And Reed Bailey went from averaging like 5.5 points a game as a freshman to 18.5 as a junior. So his improvement's really good. So I like him. Josiah Miles, 6'6" shooting guard out of North Florida. He averaged almost 2.5 made threes per game. Good size for a shooting guard. Gives you another bigger shooting guard. You could really play him, positions aren't really the same. It's more just point guard, post player, and
Right.
then whatever else you want the other three
Yeah.
to do. Call him a big wing if you want. Call him a shooting guard. It doesn't much matter. He's a guy who can go out there and make shots. So really, really like him. Um, and then obviously those are the transfer additions. And then obviously you got Trent Sisley coming in, originally from Heritage Hill, 6'8" forward, spent his senior year at Montverde. And he was a guy who initially was a little more of an interior kind of guy because at Heritage Hills, kind of had to, go inside, be the lead rebounder, kind of do some hard hat stuff. He still can do all that. He's added strength, but during his senior year at Montverde, his shooting shot up to 41% from three. So he's now, if you want to call him a stretch four, you can. I think with a lot of teams, a lot of coaches, and I certainly think with Darren DeVries, he wants as many guys on the floor who are a threat to make a three as possible. So you can call Trent Sisley a four if you want to. Doesn't really much matter, but he's a stronger guy who can help you on the boards. We'll see, depending upon what the roster looks like, how much he plays freshman year.
Yeah.
But he's one of those guys who, you know, people always look at a team that's doing well and they see a guy that they don't really remember. Man, I'd love to have one of them. Where'd they get him? Well, they recruited him and retained him and developed him, and now all of a sudden he's a junior. That's where they got him. They recruited him naturally and they worked with him and developed him. And I think Trent Sisley is going to be somebody people really like. And the other thing I think people are really going to like about Trent Sisley is that dude just competes his tail off every possession. Whether it's shots are going in or not, he's out there banging shoulders with people, going for rebounds, setting screens, moving the ball. I just think his competitiveness and his competitive nature, I think is something that Hoosier Nation's really going to enjoy.
Now, these guys that are coming in from Sam Houston State, guys that are coming in from North Florida, is that
Mhm.
what it's? I know that there are people that are like, okay, well, we got all excited for Peyton Sparks a couple years ago, and that didn't pan out. Guys moving up from a lower level to a higher level sometimes don't. What possibly makes these guys different?
Well, I think anytime you go from low to mid or mid to high, the counting stats, if you will, are going to come down. Because somebody who is the leading scorer in North Florida isn't automatically going to walk in the door and be the leading scorer over there at Simon Scott Assembly Hall.
Right.
They're probably not going to be, but they might be the second guy or the third guy or whatever. But what you look at is what efficiency numbers are good and what does a coach want? And one of the things DeVries really wants is guys who can make threes. And so you're like, okay, how efficient are you at making threes? If you're averaging two or more per game as a guard or a wing, that's pretty good.
Right.
So I think those are the things that suggest they project very well. The other thing is you look at, okay, what does a coach run offensively? And does he have a system that maximizes the primary skills, the best skills of the guys he's getting? And I think the answer is yes with Darren DeVries. He does the Creighton thing of trying to score in the first 12 seconds. There's lots of movements. It's more about, it's not motion, but they run some things that are more about concepts, reading the defense, and moving the ball. The other thing he does not want, he does not like guys who just over dribble. He doesn't want the ball sticking in people's hands for 3, 4, 5 seconds. And with Tate and Conaway, the ball gets up, the ball moves. With Connor Enright, the ball comes up the court and the ball moves.
Yeah.
Those things are really good. With Reed Bailey, I think if he's out there on the floor with guys like Josiah Miles and Lamar Wilkerson and guys like that, those guys are threats to make threes. So there's going to be space. And if you watch Reed Bailey, one of the things he's really good at is his passing off the dribble. As a 6'10" guy who mainly is more not on the interior like on the block, but below the free throw line. But when he has space, when he can put the ball on the deck, he finds people. He's really good at finding people for a 6'10" guy. I mean, he's not a point forward, but he has a little bit of point forward skills to him. Like you have no problem with him putting the ball on the deck to make a play for somebody else.
Yeah.
So I think the primary skills of the players they're bringing in fit the things that Darren DeVries wants to emphasize with his offense. That's one of the reasons I think it makes a lot of sense. Now they got 7 guys, still got to put the rest of the roster together. But all we can talk about right now is who they got and what does it make sense or not make sense. And it really does. Like last year, there were times you looked at IU playing 2 bigs, and it wasn't just that they were playing 2 bigs. They played 2 guys who were on the block scorers. They both needed the same space on the floor to uh, produce, at the maximum efficiency. So it was a little bit of land of misfit toys out there. Malik Renew and Umar Ballo were on the block scorers.
Right.
And so it didn't really fit. So I think what we're seeing now with what Darren DeVries and Drew Adams, Kenny Johnson, Dick Norton, those guys are going after are guys who really make sense for how Darren DeVries wants to play, and they make sense for the way the game is being played now. The guys they have now, just the 7 guys they have now. Well, 6 because take Trent Sisson off the table because he's a high school kid.
Right.
The 6 guys that they have in the portal combined to make more threes last year than the entire IU team did last year.
Yeah.
Jared Kelly from Peegs.com had that great stat. The story's up if anybody wants to read it. But I mean, it's 2025.
Right.
We've been talking about this for a long time, and the whole thing. Woodson said on the radio, 2s are just as good as 3s, and it's like, no, they're not.
No, they're worth actually a little bit less.
Yeah, they're actually. Yeah, and it's like no. So I think we're going to see. A better brand of basketball is going to be played. Now the schedule's tougher. And so we'll see how, what's the record going to be? I don't know. They got 7 guys right now.
Yeah.
And one of them's a good player, but he's coming out of high school. Okay. I know he's coming out of Montverde and I love him long term, but you can't ask him to go out there and be a dude.
Right.
But I just think that the brand of basketball is just going to be better. It's going to be better offense. They're going to run things to get threes. They're not going to be dependent on just throwing the ball to the block. I just think people are going to enjoy watching the team play a lot more.
And it's so simple. That's what people want. That's what they got tired of last year.
Yeah.
Was running the same thing over and over and over again, where you're just looking at each other like, what are they trying to do here?
Yeah. Yeah. It just yeah. Not to beat the dead horse, but
Right.
it's just going to be a better brand of basketball. I think that's what people are going to notice quickly, And obviously, you got to go to Kentucky. You're going to have Louisville in Indy. You've got, some tough games on the schedule. The Big Ten, you got a number of teams that have really reloaded. Purdue's getting mentioned as a potential preseason #1. Love what Dusty May has up at Michigan. Tom Izzo's teams are going to go compete. So wins and losses, I don't know. We'll see. But the brand of basketball is just going to be better. And I think that's really going to make people just enjoy watching the Hoosiers more often. Just because it's going to be better basketball.
In terms of the next group of people that's going to be out here, you talk about the 7 guys who have committed. Who are those guys that are going to be able to maybe start to fill out that roster a little bit?
You mean other targets?
Yeah, other targets that are going to be coming this way.
Yeah, I think they would love to add one more wing, whether you call it a 2 or 3, whatever.
Right.
But they'd love to add another wing. Ideally, one with a little bit of size, 6'5" or taller. You can play 6'5" guy at the 3 in today's game. But they would like another wing. They want to get another center, maybe 2. Maybe because Reed Bailey, you could play him at the 4 if you want.
Right.
Davidson played him at the 5, but if you can go get 2 rim protectors, I think they would be okay doing that. Now, there's not a ton of guys out there right now, but talking to some agents over the last few days, I don't know that the portal is done portally, shall we say.
Yes.
I think there's a chance that new names could still emerge. Now, whether that impacts Indiana's options or not, I don't know. We'll see. But I think they would love to add another wing. They would love to add a center. And maybe 2 centers. And then that would really get you up to 9 guys from the portal who ideally have produced somewhere else. Trent Sisley would be a high school guy. There's your 10th guy. If you got 8 or 9 guys who can play, do what you want them to do, that's a really good core. Then from there, you can kind of be like, okay, what do we want to do? Do we want to take another high school kid or 2 for developmental purposes?
Yeah.
You think of like just a possibility. Des Briscoe, 6'8" power forward from Crispus Attucks, had a tremendous career, led them to the 3A state runner-up, playing for Coach Chris Hawkins. He was going to go to Iowa, but he decommitted. He's open right now. But I think that the key thing right now is finish out the core 8 or 9 guys in the portal. Then once they feel really good with the core 8 or 9, then it's going to be okay. Do we want an extra guard? Do we want an extra whatever out of the portal? Or do we want to go look at some high school guys? So I think that's most likely the way it's going to fill out.
This 2025-26 season, I mean, we're talking about second year Kurt Signetti coming off of a hell of a lot of success last year, and it's looking like it's pointed in that correct direction.
Right.
you have a fresh start over at Assembly Hall. Going all the way down to the training staff. I mean, it is a fresh start for the Hoosiers. Much of this upcoming season you think is going to be something where Hoosier fans can, if they aren't, uh, that it's just going to be different because it is a fresh start for basketball,
Mhm.
higher expectations, but certainly the pieces are in place to have another successful football season. Just feels a little bit different than than we've seen in a little while.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It does. It does feel different. I think there's just more general, not like optimism for specific win-loss records,
Yes.
but a feeling of people are happy with the direction of the two programs now. And there have been plenty of years where football had more questions than answers.
Right.
And,
And those
over
questions were never answered or were answered real bad.
that's true. There were
Yeah.
answers. They were the wrong ones.
Yeah.
It's the wrong ones. So there was just, I think with the football, there were so many years, there was almost just like angst. It was like, why can't they get going? Why do they, oh man, why? There's just frustration.
Sure.
And I think over the last 8 years with basketball, 4 under Mike Woodson, 4 under Archie Miller, I think there was just considerable frustration that, they watched everybody else go make threes and they looked at the Hoosiers and went, why can't you make threes?
Right.
They watch team after team come into Assembly Hall and light them up and go, what? We can't make threes, but
Mhm.
we're going to give up a bunch.
Yeah.
This is backwards.
And that's Big Ten teams, that's mid majors, that's everybody would come in and do
I mean,
that.
IPFW walked in that
Yeah.
building and lit them up. And Illinois walks in the building and beats them by 25 last
Right.
year. I mean, it ran them off the court. So I think there was people were just, I think frustration in Hoosier Nation for basketball almost started slipping into exasperation. Because people saw the same thing happen over and over and over. And people looked at it like, somebody do something.
Right.
It's that old meme of poking something with a stick, do something.
Do something, yeah.
And the only thing they did was keep doing the same stupid things and failing to shoot and give up a whole bunch of threes. And so I think there's just there's an optimism, but it's more almost an optimism of there's some comfort there that people believe they're going to watch a better brand of basketball.
Right.
They're going to see their team try to play the way you need to play in the year 2025. And I think people really got tired of, when IU didn't play well, Woody just constantly saying, I need to get him over the hump. People were like, give us a little better explanation than that.
Yeah.
Um, so I think there's enthusiasm that hasn't been there for a while. And I think there's just a general sense people are happy that they see a plan.
Right.
They're not expecting a guarantee of a certain number of wins or anything. They see an actual plan. They see somebody who came in and said, hey, we're going to emphasize shooting. We're going to play a little quicker. We want this kind of point guard. We want these kind of guards and wings. And goes in the portal and starts getting those kind of players.
Right.
So people hear a plan that makes sense, and then they see a coach assembling pieces to go, oh, that fits, and that's kind of point guard he was talking about. That's kind of Lamar Wilkerson. That's kind of shooting guard he was talking about.
Right.
Josiah Miles. That's kind of big wing he was talking about. So people see a plan and see it actually being put into place. And again, it's not a guarantee of a certain number of wins,
Right.
but people actually hear a plan that makes sense, and then they see it starting to be put together. It's almost like watching a car get built. You're like, okay, engine hadn't even started yet, but we like the pieces that are getting put on the frame. And I think that's kind of the sense that I get from, you know, you know, being on the message board and just reading people's comments and everything. I think people are like, okay, this guy does have a plan and he does know what he's doing. And guys like Drew Adams and Kenny Johnson, they got connections and they can go out there and get us some dudes.
Right.
So I think there's some happiness in Hoosier Nation.
And
right
there's
now.
some comfort in the unknown because look, after Tom Allen was let go prior to last football season, you didn't know how Signetti was going to be, but you knew it wasn't going to be the way it was under Tom Allen. It was going to be at the very least something different.
Sure.
And that something different is just pregnant with possibilities, which we saw last year. This change with basketball shows that, okay, it's the same kind of feeling. It's pregnant with possibility that it's going to be better than it was. You already have success over here on football, and it's pointing in the right direction. And like you said, it isn't even necessarily about getting to 11 wins. It is a confidence that we saw something that is repeatable going forward. And to me, again, pregnant with possibilities is everything here because that's what hope is.
Right.
You're hoping for something better.
Right.
Sometimes it happens, and it happened last year with football, and it's continuing. It doesn't seem like a flash in the pan situation. Over at basketball, it's that excitement, that possibilities are there.
That's a really good way to phrase it.
I mean, that's that's
Uh,
that's that's
That's
where
a
we
really
are.
good way to phrase it. Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing. And yeah, I mean, when a couple of days after DeVries was hired, uh, Trevor Andershock and I went down and sat in his office and talked to him for a little while. And you know this as long as you've covered sports, but when you sit down and talk to a coach, especially somebody you really haven't talked to much before,
Right.
and DeVries and I talked here there at AAU events, but I wouldn't say like we knew each other well or anything. We just knew who each other was, and we texted and talked here and there. But to sit down and talk to him, when you ask somebody a question and you get specifics in the answer, that gives you confidence that there's a real plan there.
Right.
When you get generalities or just a string of ridiculous cliches, some of which made sense in the 1970s but don't anymore,
Right.
then you start to be like, you're a little concerned. And sitting there talking to Darren DeVries, there were incredible specifics. I mean, we even dove into, and I got to write this story at some point. We even he dove into like how and when they were at Creighton, they came up with this whole concept of trying to score within 12 seconds, how it started, why they kind of fiddled with it, why they were like, has a chance. And then they were like, okay, but we got to tweak this and that. And then it got to be to where tactically it was like, okay, kind of like how guys run the lanes, where if it's a made shot or missed, there are certain different tactical things you do. But he just dove into it. And there are a tremendous amount of details. And I remember walking out of that, and Trevor and I were talking on the drive back, and I was like, that's a real plan.
Yeah.
Like a real plan. No, that's not somebody who just wrote down some concepts to throw out there at the, introductory press conference.
Right.
This is a guy who can sit there and talk about it. And if you want to, drill down in any one specific area, he can drill down in details. And I thought that was the moment I was like, okay, this guy has a real plan. He knows what he's doing.
Well, and like Signetti, there's a confidence there
Mm-hmm.
because, and this to me is the first guy that they've had since basically Kelvin Sampson, to be honest with you, who is confident in what they could do and knowing that the way that he plays on the court can be successful. I always felt that Tom Crean was trying to prove himself, at some level along the way. He wasn't dripping with confidence.
Right.
Kelvin was. Mike Davis knew that he was kind of out of his element a little bit. Archie hadn't had success at a major conference level in a way look, Aaron DeVries didn't go to the NCAA tournament at West Virginia, but he went from 9 wins to 19 wins.
Right.
You have the success that he had year over year over year at Creighton, or no, at Drake, sorry.
Right.
So he knows that it works.
Right.
His process, and having that kind of confidence is really important in being able to sell your players that you're confident in what you're saying. And that's something that Sig did last year, and he's doing to all the new guys coming in. And it just feels like these are two coaches that at least have a clear vision of what they want and don't have to try to prove anything outside of doing what you're doing and letting the players find out for themselves that it all works.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. And by the way, I totally forgot to mention Tucker DeVries when we were talking about players. Obviously, coach's son. He was there at the introductory press conference. It doesn't seem like a new addition.
Right.
It's like coach and son coming together kind of thing. But Tucker, obviously, he was only able to play 8 games last year because of his,
Shoulder,
shoulder surgery. But he's another guy who's got really good size, can play the 3 or the 4, and makes threes and can play the whole game. He's another guy. But to your point, yeah, I think there is that confidence with DeVries to like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to put together a good staff. We're going to adjust as we need, but we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's not this, with Archie always felt like he had an idea, but it didn't work. And then he was like, yeah, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And Woody came in and just, too much 1980s offense and talking about how, he wanted to build the whole team on defense, but it's like, one, their defense wasn't very good. And 2, there's too much skill in the game today. You
Yeah.
can't defend everybody into submission anymore. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
You want a good defense, and obviously what Kelvin Sampson did at Houston was unbelievable. All the credit in the world to those guys, the coaches and the players, and that got them to the Final Four. Um, but okay, just because one person who's been at a school for more than a decade, just because one guy got it done, doesn't mean that everybody can replicate that.
Right.
And you look at the NCAA tournament, especially Sweet 16 on, good offenses beating good defense with higher frequencies about every year now. And the teams that went to the Final Four are ranked number 1, number 2, number 3, number 9 in offensive efficiency. If you're going to try to do something special or build toward doing something special at some point in time, it's not going to happen overnight or anything like that. You have to have good offensive concepts.
Yeah.
You just have to. You got to recruit the right kind of offensive skill players, and your concepts have to be good. You have to design things for guys to get threes. You just have to. And then the other thing, and this isn't to like temper expectations or anything. People can hope for whatever they want to hope for, but like Todd Golden just won a national championship.
Right.
His first year at Florida was average. It was average, but he had really good offensive concepts, and he knew that his offense would work. And it just took him a couple of recruiting cycles to get to a certain level of talent. So I'm not really. Most of the time, I give coaches at least 3 years.
Sure.
I want to give you 3 years because even with the portal, yeah, you can go get veteran guys. There's more plug and play guys available. I get that. But still, it's most of the time it takes a couple recruiting cycles to really get what you need
Yeah.
or what you want. Because sometimes, I mean, the portal's not a draft. You can't be like, okay, I want Bykoff. Boom, I get Bykoff. I want Trevor Anderson. I mean, shoot, some other school may really, really make a great recruiting pitch and get Ken Bykoff.
This would be a terrible basketball team. Just a garbage basketball team. But go ahead.
Well, Trevor was actually at five-star camp one time, and you back when we had the old media games, I think you put 20 on my head one day. I remember that. I was like, oh man,
20 beatings. Physical.
I think that too. But no, but I think a lot of times it takes some time. So I always give coaches at least 3 years. But and you don't have to hit a certain win total or anything in 3 years. But does the plan make sense? Is the plan being executed? Is there reason to believe that this person, with his plan and his recruiting philosophy and his recruiting ability and his staff's recruiting ability, does that make sense does that give you hope that they're going to be good for an extended period of time? And by year 3, the answer needs to be yes.
Yeah.
It needs to be yes. And I think I have great confidence that Darren DeVries is going to do very well at Indiana.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an exciting time at Simon Scott Assembly Hall, an exciting time at Memorial Stadium. Spring game tonight at 8 o'clock. Kickoff. It's not televised, but all the coverage that you could want on Peegs.com, both during the game and then and after the game as well, as we move into Friday for all the coverage with that. This obviously was designed as a call-in show. Somewhere along the way, we had connection issues, and so that's why we haven't gotten calls. We haven't been on YouTube for a little while, but it doesn't make a difference. I'm going to take the whole video and put it on YouTube. People are going to be able to see it, and
There
so
you
that's why I didn't stop us from doing it. But I do appreciate you taking the time to come on out here
Absolutely.
and join us, and hope you get to enjoy the game and enjoy the coverage, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It should be a fun night. I'm looking forward to it.
That's all the time we have on the Peegs podcast live. I want to thank you for watching. I want to remind you to visit Peegs.com for the very best NIU football and basketball coverage you're going to find anywhere. Nobody covers Hoosier recruiting better than Jeff Rabjohns, Matt Weaver, Trevor Andershock, and Jared Kelly. So come be a part of a thriving and exciting community at Peegs.com. Folks, you are not going to be disappointed. Folks, we're out of time. But for Jeff, Matt, Trevor, and Jared, I'm Ken Bykoff saying thanks for listening, everybody.